In a quiet corner of a bustling city, hidden between the skyscrapers and neon lights, there was a small, unassuming bookshop. The sign above the door read, "A Passage in Time." It wasn't much to look at from the outside, its windows fogged with age, its wood panels chipped, but those who wandered inside often found themselves lost in its magic. The shop was filled with the scent of old paper and the hum of whispered stories waiting to be discovered. The shop was run by an elderly man named Arthur, a man with silver hair and a sharp eye for the books that would capture a person's soul. He had owned the shop for decades, ever since his youth, when he had opened it as a way to share his love for stories with the world. Arthur never had much in terms of wealth or status, but he had a life full of meaning, a life tied to the characters and tales in the books that lined the walls. One rainy afternoon, a young woman named Emily stepped into the shop, drenched from the downpour. She was in her late 20s, dressed in a business suit, her face tense with the weight of the world. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but she didn't bother to check it. Emily had always been someone who thrived on deadlines, on lists, on constant motion. She had recently been promoted in her high-powered job, and the pressure of her new responsibilities weighed heavily on her. Yet, despite all her achievements, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. As soon as she stepped inside the bookshop, the noise of the city outside seemed to fade, swallowed up by the soft, inviting silence within. She looked around, taking in the worn shelves crammed with books of every shape and size. She hadn't been in a bookstore in years, not since college. The thought of a book, a real book, felt almost foreign to her now. Everything in her life was digital, emails, texts, work reports. But there was something comforting about this place, something that beckoned her in. Arthur noticed her immediately, his eyes twinkling beneath the weight of his age. He had seen many people come and go, people lost in the noise of the world, always too busy to truly see the beauty around them. But Emily was different. There was a weariness in her eyes, an exhaustion that spoke of too many late nights and too little sleep. "Looking for something special?" Arthur asked gently, his voice soft, but carrying the weight of years of wisdom. Emily glanced up at him, slightly startled. She hadn't expected anyone to speak to her in this quiet, forgotten place. I'm not sure," she said, her voice uncertain. I needed a break." Arthur smiled, understanding more than she realized. "Sometimes, a good book is the best kind of break," he said, motioning to the shelves. "A story can take you far away from everything, make you forget the weight of the world for a while." Emily walked slowly down the aisles, running her fingers over the spines of the books, feeling the texture of the covers beneath her fingertips. Each one seemed to hold a secret, a hidden world waiting to be unlocked. She stopped in front of a shelf filled with old novels and pulled one out. It was a classic book she had read as a child, a story about adventure, friendship, and discovery. She opened the first page and was immediately pulled back into the world it described. The weight on her chest seemed to lighten with every word she read. Arthur, who had been watching her quietly, approached her with a small, worn book in his hand. He handed it to her. "Here," he said. "This one might be just what you need." Emily took the book, surprised at its simplicity. It wasn't a title she had heard of before, but there was something about it that intrigued her. She opened it and began to read the first few lines. The words were simple, but profound. The story was about a person who had been chasing success and ambition their whole life, only to find that the more they achieved, the emptier they felt. It was a story of rediscovery, of learning to find joy in the small, quiet moments of life, the moments people often overlooked while chasing bigger dreams. As Emily read, she felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was as if the story had mirrored her own life. She had been chasing success for so long that she had forgotten how to truly live. She had become consumed by her work, by the constant pursuit of more, and in doing so, had lost touch with the simple things that once brought her joy. She looked up at Arthur, who was watching her with a knowing smile. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice softer than before. Arthur simply shrugged, his eyes kind. A good book doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. It tells you what you need to hear. Emily closed the book and looked around the shop again, her eyes lingering on the peaceful shelves filled with stories. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she had forgotten: peace. It was as if, in that small bookshop, the noise of the world had faded, and she could finally breathe. As she left the shop, the rain had stopped, and the sky had cleared. Emily stepped back into the city, but this time, it didn't feel quite so overwhelming. She realized that, in a world that never seemed to slow down, she had the power to choose when to pause, when to read, when to listen to the quiet moments. Moral of the story: in the rush of life, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. Sometimes, all we need is a break, a moment of stillness, a good story, or a quiet space to remind us that life is about more than just the chase. It's about finding meaning in the moments we often overlook.